Hello, my name is Harton Watko. I'm smiling because I am flabbergasted, if that's the right word. PPP, public-private partnership. And who does that serve? The partnership. It's not the people. Let's continue this issue, gentlemen. Alam mo, nawawala ako ng konti kasi parang lumalalim, no? It gets deep in the sense that the semantics seem to clash, di ba? Nakakalito ng konti. So the idea is government should serve the people. Okay. The good of the people.
Yes.
The majority of the people.
The general welfare, which is the majority.
Yeah, the general welfare.
Yeah, yeah.
So if we serve the majority, meaning 50 plus 1, the poor is not necessarily the majority.
Well,
Hindi naman 50% plus 1 ang poor, di ba? I mean,
mas marami doon eh. No.
you think the poor is more in
Yeah.
percentage today?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Let's assume it is. There's more poor. Well, I don't know how you identify poor because poor maybe in material wealth, infrastructure kulang, but food-wise, ang Pilipinas, we're so blessed that there's always food as a probinsya. I mean, I go down all the way to Anda, and to Lingayen, nakikita ko doon. No, Lingayen, ano pa yan, mga city, pero yung talagang fifth-class municipalities. Hindi naman nagugutom ang Pilipino eh.
Well, again, this has to be done, looked into scientifically. No? What you mean by gutom, no?
Dito sa syudad, in the city, yes. People who live under the bridge, di ba? Yan, mga migrants into the cities that starve. But we see that in New York. We see that even in Washington. You see that even in Korea.
But there has to be something much more comprehensive to take a look at that. No? The indicator that I've always been enamored to, no, is if NEDA went out of its way to compute what is the caloric intake.
Oh, yeah, you told it, 2,500 minimum
yeah,
per day of every human being.
Of all Filipinos, no?
Per day or per million? Per day.
No,
2,500
per day, no? And then, yung per meal, matataba ka ng gusto. Pero kung per day, this is what is the international standard for a human being to function.
All right.
Now, I wonder where the Filipinos are in this level, in this case. No? I am willing to
I've
bet.
never heard of scientific study.
Yeah, because nobody would like to see it. This is what the problem is. No one wants to see really what the situation is when it comes. Anything lower than that, that means your people
Undernourished.
undernourished, they cannot think, they will not function, and they
will not
crime, di ba? And wala. No? So you start from there, and then from there you work out. What is it? What would it take to be able to give them that? Then jobs, right jobs, not any kind of job. It must be jobs that people can, right-paying jobs, so that they can feed their family to be able to eat that much. And then after that, what kind of jobs? Then you start looking into, if you want jobs, you have to have the businesses. And if you want to have these businesses being put up and factories being put up, what kind of infrastructure do you need in order for those businesses to
So
be?
you've got a thinking government is what we require. It's a real thinking government that is set to serve the people.
People. That is the whole point of an economic program. No?
But when you say government, it's not just a person, not just a president. You're talking of a system that he is implementing, that he is
So institutions.
the institutions, the economic institutions, the financial institutions, the legal,
Without
political.
that, if they're not in place,
If they're not aligned, then if they're starting to serve
each other properly, or the people. Yeah.
not the people, but the capitalists or whoever the leader identifies with. That's it.
Which is the case today.
Which is
the case today.
Which is the case
Kaya
today.
runaway yung mga mayayaman, nagiging disgustingly mayaman.
And then you've got economists and the academics saying, "Oh, ang ganda ng ating our economy is so great. Our GDP,
Pero
the
gutom naman to.
fundamental." But-
1,000 caloric lang to.
No,
Parang
not
ganon.
only that. Look at that. What's happening? Look at our country. We are a natural resource-rich country.
We are.
Okay, but what happened? We're now a service economy.
We are.
Why?
service
We never industrialize. You know what happens when the foreign investors came in? What did they do? Took out our natural resources.
They bring it out.
Oh, look at this. Coconut. 80% of our coconut oil is out of this country, exported, processed in some other country, and then they sell us back the
Sell it back for our use.
Forests, trees. We lost 7 million hectares of land, forest land, in 30 years. Now we're down to about 1 million. But we don't have a wood industry to speak of. You know, we don't even have a Philippine plywood that is export grade.
That's true, isn't it?
Why? What happened? They just extracted. You see, what you had as a system that extracted raw materials
And exported.
from this country and just brought it there. Now this is the same thing you're going to continue. You're now saying, foreign investors, you can come in and take our mines. That's even worse. That's the last natural resource base that we have. You come in and take it out, what are we going to do?
So it's
Service
the fault
economy.
of all our politicians in the last
In the
5 decades.
Yeah, it's their fault, but it's also because they allowed the system like that to continue. It's like this. It's like, you have a computer, you have a, diba? Okay. The computer, it's the software and the
Hardware,
operating system
yes.
that tells you what to do, okay? That confines what you can do,
Correct.
diba? Okay. Charter change, what is the charter change doing now? They're just changing the operator of the computer. But the whole software and operating system
It's the
is
same
still
thing,
the same.
same
It's the
people.
same people. So what's
Ako nga, natatawa ako dun sa consultative commission. Well, it's not even a consultative commission. It was a grouping of, my God, Christian Monsod. I mean, really. And, di ba? I mean, ano ako eh. And Mr. Noted was in the middle, buti na lang, not banging the gavel, di ba? And everyone's, and tama nga, I remember one guy there, representing Manggagawa, hindi naman namin makakain yung federalism eh. Ba't ganun? Hindi, bigyan mo kami ng trabaho. Di ba? Yun ang hinihingi niya eh. Trabaho eh. Pagkain, trabaho.
But you see that even there, if you look at our constitution, when they define what is economic development, that's what they mention: full employment, jobs. Nothing about industry.
Oo nga, walang industriya.
Nothing
So
about your
kasi itong mga
agriculture.
billions, for example, itong CONCON that many are proposing, it will cost 10, 20 billion. Sana magtayo na lang tayo ng ating processing plant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Kesa papasok pa tayo ng mga umutang na lang ang gobyerno, and then magtayo na lang. Ang problema, hindi sila kikita.
Exactly.
Yan.
Yun,
Okay.
yun. That's
Nauli
it.
na natin.
Okay, that's it.
The interests that play seem to take priority and steps in front of the projects itself. So it is lost even before it begins.
It is lost before it begins because that system continues in your mind and in the
So what we
institution.
need is a systems change, and where do we begin there? Hindi na academia na. It's first identifying the patriot, creating patriots through the academe or the schools, di ba?
Yeah.
Teaching them as
I
to
think-
grow.
I
And then
think that-
for people to do what is good for the country, not for their pockets.
Right. I think it's obvious that we need to instill patriotism, love of country again, no matter how corny it sounds to many of us now. We have to reinstill that to them and find out what, at least in the CNG, we assert our sovereignty the way the president has. And we move towards the protection of our population against drugs, against crime, against everything that destroys it. Those are the basic tenets of the CNG. But there is another thing that it's a disease that had caught up in our society, and they call this the dynasties. The political dynasties that have sprouted. Actually, the political dynasty started during Corazon Aquino's time. When she started opening up the country with
Kamag-anak Inc.
with pork barrel. No. The pork barrel of Marcos during his time was 100,000 pesos per year per member of the parliament. No. But with Corazon Aquino, it started to
Yeah,
go
to
up.
climb.
75 million for congressmen and 200 million for
Yes, correct.
okay. I think you want to get rid of, you cannot legislate against dynasties because they are the legislators themselves, right? If you make an amendment in our constitution and include that this should be taken out completely, the pork barrel should be taken out completely, you will take out what feeds these dynasties. The dynasties were set up because politics became a business, a family business.
Yes.
Right? And after your term, the wife takes over, then the son
Son,
takes
yes,
over, then he
balik na
becomes a mayor, and so on and so forth. Okay? Because all of that is a family business.
So it stays in the...
Now, if you take out what feeds this monster, no, eventually it should die.
It seems it's already unconstitutional with the DAP. It was the Supreme Court, no less, ruled against it and ruled against the pork barrel. But it's still there in a different form today.
Yes,
they,
yes.
they just stole the meaning of the word.
You see,
They changed it.
They changed it.
the chief executive, in that case, Noynoy Aquino, didn't want to take it out because that was the way he wanted to rule. He wanted to buy the loyalties of these people in case he wants to do something. He did that by taking out Corona. He did that
Yes.
by all the time, including getting this EDCA thing passed, no? Despite its unconstitutionality. No? But if the moment you take that out in all of its forms, no? You put legislators only to legislate. They don't want it, then they shouldn't run. No? And because it's
So
not,
don't make it profitable.
don't make it profitable for them. You take out what feeds this monster, and you have to put that in the Constitution. No? And I wonder if they have the
The dynasty
will to
issue
do it.
in that last committee hearing, not necessarily because I have not heard the 19-man appointed board. There's only one woman, I think, and almost all men. That has not been put or broadcast. But this new group that was what's his name, invited the committee on the Chacha on
Yes,
the
yes.
Senate. One of the biggest issues in the same complaints in dynasties,
yes.
Andudunan dynasties.
Yeah.
But rather than prohibit it, it is best to take out what feeds them, is what
That's
you're
right.
saying.
Because you have somebody like Chief Justice Puno saying, in order for us to go through this charter change, you have to dismantle the dynasties.
That's what he
How
said.
do you do that? No? How do you dismantle? How do you outlaw them? Because the very people that are going to
India.
pass that law are themselves. No?
Yun na nga, ang
You
Congress.
cannot legislate against themselves. They won't.
No, they
They
won't.
will not do that. No? And some are saying the dynasties, the dynasties. But nobody's saying, how do you kill this monster that we have created? Take out what feeds them. Even if with all of they say, no, we give this
Who
to the
has
people.
that power, that authority to actually physically take that out? The judiciary, the Supreme Court, can only interpret the law. The executive can only actually exercise the implementation
Well,
of legislation.
That group that the president has formed, or whatever it is, if it's the president that formed, and would propose the amendment to the present constitution, no? Because there are people that want just an amendment to the present constitution. That must be inculcated immediately there, and the president should push hard on it, no? And if he does, I think it can be done, no?
So sila lang ang hope natin.
Right.
The consultative
Yeah.
committee that the president's put together, but who can only make up 20% of the legislators. Because remember, as it goes through, before it goes into the plebiscite for the people to vote on, 80% of the votes will have to come from Congress. Di ba? For them to, I'm talking to where the cha-cha train is going.
But if that provision is of taking out the pork barrel altogether, every single cent of it, if that's taken out, and the president pushes it, he will have 20, 30 million people behind him. No? And Congress may not be able to negate that. No? And that's the only way. Because if it is the major stumbling block for us to be able to move forward so that special interest groups are not going to proliferate, no? Then
It sounds logical. But can this 20, well, it's now 19. The magic figure is supposed to be 25 versus the 300 legislators that we have. Hindi kaya kakainin lang sila ng mga legislators. Congress will eat them alive. That's what the Speaker of the House already said.
well,
Maski inimbita kayo, nandiyan kayo, kami rin ang papasa nito. Sinabi niya na ni Bebot Alvarez.
pwede rin. Pero go to the people when you're doing this thing. In the plebiscite, you have to go to the people. No? And this particular
But the
issue,
plebiscite is only on the final,
on the final,
Ano yun?
when they put together, when they suma total na ng what is being discussed. But the legislators, ano nila yan? They will water it down.
but supposedly the ace of the people behind this thing should be the president. And that should
Kawawa naman presidente natin,
Hindi,
ginagawa
talagang-
natin sa Super D,
Hindi,
Super
pero-
Duterte, no?
kakailanganin ng support niya dito. No? Kung hindi mabubuwag yung dynasties.
Ito ng Deng vaccine, hindi nila maayos-ayos. There's a lot of words going back and forth. People are already beginning to scream out for Duterte to get involved. I mean, come on, Deng vaccine, siya pa rin yan. Parang ganun. Siya na lahat, no? I mean, so far.
Well, right now, siya talaga lahat because he's the phenomenon. He's the phenomenon. He's the hope of the people. That's why he got himself there, because of the protest vote of the people. No? And they're expecting him to do all kinds of things, including the economy, you know, which sadly is trying to abdicate.
Well, it seems like the economy is about to blow up. Well, blow up in the sense, inflation, I think, in
Yes.
Feb, or the report for January, Feb is going to climb.
And
Because
the
naguunahan na yung mga pabrika, yung mga canned goods, naguunahan na
Yun na nga, I'm glad you brought it out. Because in this, all this talk about the charter change, I think the problem, my concern,
Yes.
is that we're overly focused on the structure of power and governance, all the drama that goes into that, okay?
Federalism, yeah.
There is, but the bigger problem is, the system that's been there, and we are continuing, and we're just changing the computer operator.
So musical chairs. kumbaga.
Musical chairs.
Musical
And
chairs.
do you think it's going to improve just because you now decentralize power? Maybe these guys are even more hungry.
Yeah.
And so, but you have to deal with very, very fundamental economic provisions that are now being addressed. They say this is what needs to be changed. And I'm afraid, actually, that all this talk about this changing in structure
Cha-cha, yeah. Cha-cha.
is a decoy and a distraction from the real things that we must address. The role of government, we talk about that.
Yun, the role of God.
The role of government vis-a-vis privatization. Should we continue this? Look, we talked about privatization. We believed in it. They said, competition will bring down the prices. What's happening now?
We brought it up.
Never did.
We now have the highest prices in the world for
The
power.
rice is climbing, incidentally. And that's the staple product.
You got problem, industrialization. Your people are leaving the countryside. The national average age of the farmer right now is 57 years old.
Yes.
In 5 years, we
Tataas
don't
pa yan,
have.
no?
In 5 years, we don't have an
Farmers.
agriculture. Your land might be there, but you don't have an agricultural industry. In the meantime, we have an economic thinking that says, let the other guys produce it. Let Vietnam, Thailand produce the rice.
Hindi
Forget
na tayo
about it.
food sufficient.
O ano nangyari sa atin?
Itong economists natin think that way. It's
Yeah.
not, it's free market, that no borders, so that let us import and export freely to each other. It doesn't work that way.
Doesn't
no? It doesn't work that way.
Iba
There's-
yan ang tenets ng ASEAN. supposed to be. So in other words, wag na tayo mag-plant ng rice. Bili na lang natin
Bili
sa
na lang
Vietnam.
natin, oo.
Kasi mas mura doon. Tsaka may tubig yung rivers nila, di ba?
Mas maganda yung infrastructure nila, tayo walang infrastructure.
Yeah.
See,
And if you understand your real economics, you see, alam mo, daya yan eh. Because they measure everything by the price of the good. But when you employ your own farmers and they're producing rice, no matter how
It's still ours and
it's
it's
still ours,
here.
it creates social environment, and yung social ecology
It's
mo
here, kesa
nandyan.
binibili lang natin.
In economics, we call it externalities. No? That these are the beneficial external. They don't measure that because in the pricing system, in the free market mechanism, it is not included in the computation.
Gentlemen, we've reached the end of the program. Alam mo, I told you again, Art, diba? Ang bilis ng panakbo. But we'll probably have a couple of 30 seconds or more for an exit message. Ikaw, Butch, you always enjoy giving an exit message.
I don't know.
Please.
well, the issue that confronts us right now is whether or not we're going to change our constitution. Even before saying whether it should be federalism or maintain and amend the present constitution, what we actually lack is a definition of the national objective. Where is it that we want our country to be 10 years from now, 20 years from now? And exactly what quality of life our people should be having at those times. I'm talking of our children and our grandchildren. What quality of life do we want them to have at that time? And this should be, we should be able to think clearly about this. In order to do that, try to imagine your grandchild who may not yet be born, no? And you're talking to him. And he's asking you what you did for him. What are you going to answer? That national objective will define that. Not in general terms, but in specific, categorical terms. And once we know what our objective is, then we should now know what steps to take in order to reach that objective, whether it's charter change, amendment to the Constitution, dismantling of dynasties, free market, or whatever. We should be able to do that if we know and are one in our national objective.
Like in business, the objective is it's the most specific item and the most priority that has to be created. Art, what would be your exit message based on our conversations?
Well, what's in the wind right now, what's going on right now is the charter change. And this is a chance to bring systemic change. That unfortunately, just because our people have suffered, I mean, the majority has suffered, they say there is a need to decentralize. There's a need to distribute power. But changing the power structure will not bring systemic change ipso facto. Is no guarantee. And in fact, it can be worse. We have need as a people, we need to ask the question, we're changing the system, okay, whom will the system serve? Will it serve the people? Do you have a system, will we be able to put a political or economic system that will now serve the people? So far, the provisions that are being proposed are actually contradictory to this, as I see. You're talking about foreign investments, foreign investors coming in, taking in 100% ownership of land. Okay. Ask yourself, where has foreign investment gone in this country? It went into extractive, it just took out the raw materials and brought the industries back there in their homelands. Okay. Now what is remaining is our natural resources, our mines. Okay.
Kukunin din yan.
Kukunin din yan. Don't tell me that these guys are coming here, what, to set up BPOs? They don't need to come here to do that. They want to go into the mines, they want to go into the infrastructure, because those are virtual monopolies. So this brings you to the next question,
Virtual
to the next
monopolies.
provision. The role of government. Government has abdicated its patriarch role. It needs to, he needs to be the equalizer. No, the role that they define for government now is referee. Okay?
The highest bidder.
The highest bidder pa. So, you have to have an equalizer. That's the role of government.
Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, like I said in the beginning, we have the two intellectuals. Ako, I'm still absorbing. It's abstract, but we need to understand. Leadership is not necessarily very clear. It's not easy. Thank God we've got a Super D who's around, because he's got the guts to actually go forward and do things. I mean, finally, no, after 15 presidents. But there is a need, obviously, for you and the people to understand what it is, should be government, which should be for the people. Tama nga naman, who should it serve? It's a very difficult, actually, it's so simple, it becomes difficult to put together in your mind. Maybe because I'm not an intellectual. You guys, madaling sabihin eh. It's so simple for you, no? I mean, pero, ewan ko I'll leave that to you. That's why you're watching this program, and that's why you keep up with my... Magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. I hope you've enjoyed the program. Thank you very much. Art.
Thank you for having us.